incandescent light bulbs produce pretty much the same spectrum, wide spectrum of sunlight that sun does. And the red is what improves the motor. It improves their ability to produce energy. The blue undermines it. What the problem is, how do you turn the train around? We've now got that firmly in our mind. It's not that governments have become tree huggers, but governments have certainly said, let's not waste energy. You can modify the classroom environment by basically opening windows, by getting kids to spend more time outside. If you block infrared light, you have an increase in young kids of myopia.
So welcome, Dr. Glen Jeffery, from the University College London, Professor of Neuroscience, Institute of Ophthalmology. That's all correct, I hope. I mean, I know you from probably a year ago or so, maybe a little more than a year ago. I fell down this rabbit hole of light, particularly red light and all of that stuff, because I had my own health issues. And I managed to contact, I forget the sequence, but I managed to contact Dr. Cruz via social media. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Jack Cruz, Dr. Alexis Cowan, and they all kind of gave me the story that, you know, your issue is not, because I was diagnosed with antiphospholipid syndrome and all that. And it turns out it's really down to my light environment and the way I was working under these lights and marking late through the nights and, you know, never being outside almost in the last sort of 5 years prior to that. And then I kind of encountered your research on red light, you know, decreasing blood glucose, which I thought was, you know, that to me is Nobel Prize stuff. But well, I mean, honestly, I don't know why it's not as, what would you say, popular or renowned as it should be. I don't know. I think it's gaining ground. I think it's definitely gathering momentum. So yeah, on that note, you know, my as a teacher, my kind of, let's say, my mission at the moment is to change the light environment, because now that I've realized my own situation, you know, surely we're affecting kids sit in a classroom for the most part of the day. You know, they do have a break and whatever, and they walk in between classes and that, but they're sitting for an hour at a time, 6 lessons a day, under very bright fluorescence and LEDs. So yeah, on that note, maybe you can enlighten us on kind of the issues of blue light and red light, pun not initially intended, but recognized.
Okay. All right. So, you know, the platform, the big picture that I think everyone is probably aware of if they think about it is that, you know, all life evolved under sunlight. And whether you're a plant or whether you're a human, you've adapted to that. And so for billions of years, let's then think about us as a species. We evolved, maybe you can argue 4 or 5 million years. And in our case, we evolved in Africa. We evolved close to the equator. So we had a really standardized pattern of light. We had a 12-12 light-dark cycle that didn't vary much over the year. Weather was generally pretty good. And we didn't wear any clothes. We didn't need to wear any clothes. So the consequence of that was the pattern is very standard. The whole of your body moves around that pattern and adjusts to that pattern, and that includes your immunity, particularly your metabolism, etc. So we then kind of started making a few mistakes, and one of those mistakes is we moved to places like Great Britain, where the skies are grey. It's pretty kind of unpleasant. So we had something set in terms of our relationship with the sun for millions of years. And then we moved north or south, and consequently that changed a bit. We could accommodate that. We then moved into the built environment away from sunlight, but that was kind of roughly okay because we had incandescent light bulbs. And incandescent light bulbs produce pretty much the same spectrum, wide spectrum of sunlight that sun does. Fire does the same. My point is, and I'm banging this drum pretty loudly, is around 2000, some people won the Nobel Prize, not for regulating blood sugars, but for inventing the LED, the light emitting diode.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic device because it only produced the light we see, didn't waste any energy in terms of heat. And the world changed. The world became cheaper. We all thought we'd done something great. But what we had done in the introduction of the LED is we had removed 90% of the solar spectrum. We removed all those bits we couldn't see. Now, that's fine, superficially, that's great. But we didn't appreciate at that time that some of the wavelengths we don't see have profound influence on our bodies, our immunity, and our metabolism.
Yeah.
And it's only now that we're just beginning to see things creep in. These changes could increase incidence of disease, increase incidence in a whole series of things. And science is siloed. It's a massive problem. We're all siloed. But when you rip down the walls of the silos and you get everybody into the coffee room, they're all saying, yeah, I noticed this. Yeah, I noticed that. So when we produced the LED, what we did do was, the key issue is we took out all the infrared wavelengths of light, the ones that produce heat, and we compressed this solar spectrum right down there. We didn't appreciate that suddenly made our light very dominant in blue. It's not very obvious, but an LED generates its energy from a blue light. The fundamental issue is blue, and there's no infrared.
Yeah.
So Glen walks around and he starts getting some fantastic results by giving people infrared light. And I must admit, I rode that wave, and it was a very pleasant wave to ride. But he didn't think about something. He didn't think about, why am I getting such fantastic results? Well, I thought it was my genius or whatever. The answer was, it was because we are suppressing physiological function because of the blue lights. So what are we actually doing here? We've got these engines in our bodies, thousands of them in each cell, called mitochondria, and they can see if it's blue or red. They can detect light. When you give them the red light, when you give them broad spectrum light, you walk out in the garden, they're really happy. Like, there's a balance, they've evolved under that. But then when you give them an LED, well, the red's gone. The balance and change. And the red is what improves the motor. It improves their ability to produce energy. The blue undermines it. Go for it.
Now, I was going to say, do we know why red does that? What is it about red light, or is it just does that? Is that where we are in that study?
No, I think we've moved on from that, and this is where the physicists come in. And I'm not a physicist, but what they show is photons of red light have the ability to move electrons along in mitochondria. Now, the motor works by moving electrons along. So Bob Fosbury, who we work with, who's a physicist and an astronomer, he comes in and tells us why we're doing what we're doing. So we do have an idea what the red light's doing. It's helping the efficiency of the motor. And we also know what's going wrong with the blue light. When the blue light becomes dominant, we start to produce free radical oxygens. We start to produce these things that make inflammation. So we've changed balance. Balance has changed radically. We lost all the red. And so I can move in and get these great results giving red light. And it's not because I'm giving red light. It's because they're all under intense blue and need the balance brought back in.
Okay.
That is the key thing. So, we wandered around too often doing experiments and getting great results without asking why. I can make flies live much longer. I can make bumblebees live much longer.
Yeah.
And it's because a lot of the time they're sitting there under blue lights. And all I'm doing is coming along with a sticking plaster over a problem, and I'm resolving that problem with a sticking plaster with a red light.
So the blue light is essentially not allowing the mitochondria to function properly.
Correct.
Yeah. So they're not,
and we know that.
Yeah.
We've known that for ages. We just haven't looked at it carefully enough.
So why are the LEDs and the fluorescents and all of that essentially such a big deal, or such a major thing, that they've legalized incandescence in pretty much every part of the world now, knowing that information. I mean, what's the story behind that?
Well, I think the story about it is an intense sense of doing good. We want to reduce energy consumption.
Right.
And it was, you saved a lot of energy. You know, old incandescent light bulb, you put a hand on it and you burnt. That's wasted energy. LED, bit warm, but you don't burn. So that all makes sense. What the problem is, how do you turn the train around?
Yeah.
We've now got that firmly in our mind.
Yeah.
It's not that governments have become tree huggers, but governments certainly said, let's not waste energy.
Yeah.
How do we turn that? And that's proving to be super difficult. So we've had critical care doctors walk into the lab uninvited and saying, what's this about red light? Because I've got people on death's door here. Are you saying that we can change the light and improve things?
Yeah.
But then, they come back and say, yeah, it was always the case that patients whose beds were next to windows got discharged earlier.
Yeah.
Right? So it was there. We just weren't putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's about mitochondria. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the irony is, your hospitals and your schools probably have amongst the brightest lights. Obviously, hospitals are a very obvious, direct reason that you need people to recover. I mean, there's a lot of study about. In fact, if you go into the history of it, I think the mid 20th century, up to the mid 20th century, there were many hospitals that sort of functioned with outdoor beds and that sort of thing. That pretty much ended post World War II for maybe nefarious reasons or not. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, I'm one of the guys. I'm one of the people that said this was a load of rubbish, wheeling people outside. Scientists need to regularly kind of tick boxes where they were wrong. I now think that actually is an appropriate strategy in some cases. So Roger Schwell in LA, who's a critical care doctor, he has had a number of patients who he knows are not going to make it in the next 2 or 3 days. And he wheels them out into LA, where it's very often very sunny and there's a lot of light. And it's a little anecdotal, but the weight of anecdotal evidence is just beginning to get a little too heavy. Far too heavy. So I think that in fact, Florence Nightingale apparently said that some of the best things you can do for health are good light and good water and good air.
Exactly.
Maybe she was right. You know, maybe we're a bit arrogant in our current position.
We do seem to have lost our touch with nature. We seem to have kind of gone into an all-tech society where everything is basically, either tech or indoors and bright lights and everything. And the more of that, the better. Which seems to have distanced ourselves from the health of nature.
Definitely, and on a I think an important point on that, which is where we're driving tomorrow, is this issue that our green spaces are very important, and they're important hard scientific reasons, which is you grab a leaf in very bright sunlight, it's not hot. Why is it not hot? It's because it's reflecting the infrared light spectrum. So I've been around in parks measuring the energy coming off plants, off individual leaves, and it's just below the level that we think is therapeutic. So, hey, maybe there is something in this kind of thing about walking out into the countryside, walking into a green environment and having an effect. Now, one thing that I'm doing about that, I'm really keen to do, it's a bit gory, is to cannulate people and take blood from them while they're sitting in a crappy office.
Okay.
And then when they've kind of crapped out in the crappy office, wheeling them out into the park and taking blood samples again. It's a fishing expedition, which is bad science. I cannot believe there isn't a difference. And there is a place in the Midwest in America where they had a policy of planting thousands of trees in a concrete environment. And before they did this, they took bloods from thousands of people. And they looked at all the inflammatory markers and the cytokines and the things you probably really would prefer not to have. And then after the 1 or 2 years down the road, they got the same people back. This was now green space, and they took the bloods again. And lo and behold, a lot of these nasty markers had gone down, and it was statistically significant. So there's, again, your grandmother would say, have a walk in the park and all the rest of it. You would dismiss it. But there was something in that knowledge base somewhere. There was something.
Yeah. I know I heard something about in Japan, they do, I can't remember what they call it, but basically going off to the forest, and sitting there. What do they call it? Foresting or something. Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't find the word.
Yeah. So maybe before I delve into your expertise on sort of how light should be and what mitigating lengths we can go to help kids and us and even the parents and officers and that, maybe relate maybe as an extreme example of the harms of blue light, the lady that came back from space recently. I think you did the mice experiment where you held them under blue light for 5 hours or something.
Yeah, I didn't hold them.
Well, it illustrates the point.
So if you take, you see, I think no one's ever asked the question of what happens to you under an LED. Why should they ask the question? No reason. So we certainly put some LEDs over mice cages with energy levels probably less than an LED that you would get from an angle poise lamp. And we found that over time they put on weight. That made sense because we're reducing their mitochondrial function. Mitochondria need glucose from your blood. So if we reduce them, they don't draw out glucose. That means the glucose left in your blood and you put it on as fat.
Right.
Okay. So their behavior became a little bit peculiar. This is all published. I'm just working on a manuscript now, which shows these same mice. If you take out all their organs, you take out their kidneys, their liver, their heart, and their testes. They're all males, by the way. They're all smaller, significantly smaller. Sperm quality is reduced. The liver is very fatty. Well, kind of makes sense as well. So we have a systemic problem. So that's the mice. The NASA story I thought was great because I had nothing to do with it. So the NASA published this big paper with loads of authors, and you could look at it and see the amount of money they'd spent on this. It was big stuff.
Yeah.
And they said that astronauts on the International Space Station were suffering from mitochondrial problems, but they didn't really have a resolution. It was just measuring it all.
Yeah.
And of course, in actual fact, I think it was Bob Fosbury who looked at it and said, well, look at the lighting.
Right.
The lighting was really crippling white hard LEDs in an environment with highly reflective surfaces.
Okay.
And so that's an added problem. Now, mitochondria regulate the pace at which you age. No one's going to argue about that. It's very, very clear. I think it first came out in 1956, the mitochondrial theory of aging. And NASA said, our astronauts are aging a bit faster. So all the aging guys were going, what's going on? It's gravity, what's going on? Because again of these silos in science that we sit behind, we don't talk to one another. And of course, the corker was what you alluded to, which is the photograph of the lady who went up on the International Space Station, I think for a couple of weeks, and then got trapped for over a year.
Yes, yeah.
And the before and after photographs of her were disturbing. I mean, it was clear this person suddenly had grey hair, she had lots of wrinkles, and was very, very aged. So here was something going on which only could be understood once the silos between the different bits of science started to be pulled down. So mitochondria regulate aging. No one's going to argue. Mitochondria regulate your blood sugars. No one's going to argue about that. It's just we didn't see kind of the implications for it.
Yeah.
So it all hinges on the mitochondria. From your point of view, there is if you're happy to talk about the schools.
Yeah, yeah.
The schools are really, really important. Now, part of my life now, and in fact about a third of my life now, is spent talking to architects and lighting designers.
Right, yeah.
I'm not in the lab with test tubes anymore.
Yeah.
Now, if you go back to the classic Victorian school, which you find lots of in the UK, they've got loads and loads of windows. The windows are big. Victorians believed in light big time.
Yeah.
And, even later on, I went to a secondary school built facing south. It was a tower block and the front was all glass. Tulse Hill School, it was notorious. And yeah, we've got loads of sunlight, but all the kids fried in there basically because it was so hot in summer. But we were into light. So that was good. Now, as you move to the modern school, you very often find that we now have a environment with fewer windows. We also have an environment where the windows block that red light that you can't see. They block it to control the temperature inside.
When did that happen? Do we know? When did architecture start blocking infrared?
So 70s.
Okay.
70s, you start to get companies start to making glass with an infrared blocking film on it. Okay, which again, it's about energy saving. Great, we can control the temperature inside the building. Now, that's fine, but we now drift into an area where I'm less sure of myself. So yes, kids' health. Kids should be in broad spectrum daylight, but there's another issue that's blowing up, which the two ends of the issue are very clear. You've got this and this happens. If you block infrared light, you have an increase in young kids of myopia, right?
Okay.
Now, myopia is where the eye grows too long, so it goes out of focus.
Right, so now, it's elongating in a sense.
It's elongating. Okay. Now, your first reaction is, don't worry about that because we can give you glasses. Okay, can give. But then if you have a child whose myopia develops and goes to, say, 12 diopters, the retina gets stretched. When that kid reaches 40 and 50, their central retina is likely to degenerate. Right. So this ticking sort of time bomb on health, which starts with kids in the school. So they're not getting any infrared light. Their blood sugars are probably under less control. They're probably heavier than they were before. But we have this other additional factor of myopia. Now, I don't understand the mechanism, and we've got projects running here on myopia and school kids. It's definitely the case that if there is a wider spectrum light, things improve. So kids who spend a lot more time outside have less of a problem.
Yeah.
It's inside, so it becomes very much actually a North European focused issue. But the Chinese are deeply concerned over this. And the waters got muddied because what they did is they used laser light on kids who were developing myopia.
Okay.
Now, I personally do not see any reason on the planet why you should use a laser on someone's body or on anything unless it's a good reason. LEDs work very well for that. And the trouble was the myopia was reduced, its pace was reduced. The trouble was the kids all started turning up with damaged retinae from the laser. Right. Now that held the whole field back. So, we've got this thing with kids. Kids in classrooms are relatively sedentary. They're sitting there. Yeah. Right. So where their blood sugars are creeping up. Right. They're eating stuff that they weren't eating in the 1950s. Yes. They're eating stuff with high carbohydrate. And the light is now being regulated very, very tightly.
Yeah. So if I go back to your study of the red light and the glucose, is that an opposite in terms of sitting under the LEDs, the fluorescents, which are high blue spike? Does it have a sort of a reverse effect? Does it spike the blood glucose?
Yes. Now, I am not prepared to repeat those experiments. They weren't mine because now the whole lab has said it's just not morally acceptable.
Yeah.
to give people big doses of blue light, even though they're getting them all over the place. I don't want to do that, but others have done it.
Right.
And it certainly, we had a whole, when this business started off between red and blue light, it started off with myself and my colleague Mike Powner driving somewhere to do an experiment, 3 or 4 hour drive. You start talking stream of consciousness, and then you pay attention to something. And Mike was saying, if light regulates mitochondria, then we can play with blood sugars. His idea, not mine, I should say. So we got bumblebees, because we do quite a lot of work on bees, and we treated them like people. We starved them overnight. We gave them a glucose tolerance test in the morning, and then I must admit, we squeezed them a little bit to get some blood out of them. And blue and red worked in exact opposite.
Right. Okay.
So I felt morally okay about that. But then I looked through the literature, and you look through the literature, you find it. Short wavelength light, blue light, and problems with blood glucose. I didn't need to do that experiment on humans.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do it. So simply changing the light does not cure diabetes.
Sure.
It does not cure pre-diabetes, but it's one of those things that when you add them all up together in the pile, you've got a better handle on it.
Right.
Much better.
Yeah. So then, I mean, obviously this has consequences in classrooms. If we have, and again, I walk around the school, and it's not malevolent. It's just ignorance of the circumstance. Closed windows on a beautiful day, closed curtains, bright LEDs. I mean, I'm ironically sitting under bright LED, fluorescents right now, but it's not long term. So we are spiking children and ourselves blood sugar. There's obviously the myopia effect. It's clearly not a healthy environment. What do we need to do, I think, is the next obvious question.
Well, I'm talking very serious. I don't think it's going to be politically acceptable to go back to incandescent light bulbs. We're just not going to get there.
Yeah, especially not in South Africa with load shedding. I don't know if you know anything about us, but we barely have a functional power grid. So
I had heard that. So I'm busy talking to engineers about what are their alternatives. Now, apparently there are alternatives at the moment, which are quite a way down the pipeline, but I can't go around saying you've got it all wrong, unless I can offer you a route out, right? So we're concentrating really hard on that. But I think that you can modify the classroom environment. You can modify it by basically opening windows, by getting kids to spend more time outside. So it is definitely the case. If kids spend more time outside, the myopia is an issue. It just really is reduced. Okay. And a problem with myopia is it's not our problem. It's the next generation's problem. So politicians are just concerned with what's going to be on the front page tomorrow. They don't care what's going to happen in 20 years' time. But you're in a great environment. You're in a great, because I'm assuming that where I'm sitting here under grey skies and I've got to put 3 layers on to cycle home, you go out your front door and it's sunny, I assume.
Often. It is today, actually, a beautiful day, but it is clouding over. No, we've had a lot of rain, but no, South Africa's climate is generally stunning. Our winter is beautiful. It's the best time of the year.
And I'm deeply resentful that I've not been invited to do this conversation with you in South Africa. But
we will extend that invite for the next one.
So you potentially have got a better handle on it. You've got a much better handle on it than say the Norwegians have got. And so it's about encouraging kids to go outside. Now, I don't know whether it's ever been done to look at the rate of myopia in South Africa as opposed to the rate of myopia in, say, Northern England. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a difference. Because you've got such a consistent. Are close to the patterns of daylight that existed during evolution.
Yeah, true.
We are not.
Yeah, I mean, we are the cradle of mankind, apparently.
Yeah.
So obviously, I mean, I've actually got a student sitting right next to me. He's one of our young producers, Chris. He can attest to the fact that my classroom, come bitter cold in winter, come sunny, hot, terrible summer days, which gets pretty high up here. The windows are open, the curtains are open, and I keep chanting at them that they must embrace the environment. Is that a message you would give to all teachers?
Yes, without question. And we've both seen that film. What was his name who made that film?
Which one are we thinking?
We're talking about the film about light.
Oh, right. Sorry, Dr. Ott. Yeah, John Ott.
Dr. Ott. We have seen Dr. Ott's film.
Yeah.
Now, it is, I would encourage everybody to look at it. It's a bizarre film. It's a film of its time.
It's quirky.
Right? It's quirky. But I watched that film and I believed a lot of what I was shown. Now, one of the things that really interested me was attention. He films in that film. He has one particular character he points out who was very inattentive, very hyperactive. And when the lighting was changed, that child improved. Now, working on mitochondria and knowing how they affect the body systemically, we now talk about them working as a community. I have no problem believing that.
Yeah.
I have no problem that is an important angle. So if we change the lighting, we're not doing anything that's immoral. We're doing stuff that's perfectly safe. You and I probably grew up under incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah,
partly.
Exactly.
So it's all completely safe. And what benefits are we likely to get for a very minor change? You see, my argument regularly is, if I'm wrong, okay, I look an idiot. It's all a pile of rubbish. It hasn't cost you very much money. And none of that money it's cost you has gone in my pocket. So it seems to me to be a little bit of a no-brainer here. Going to hospitals, going to schools, going to nursing homes, and think about the lighting. Well, one of the experiments that we did recently, which I think was quite important, was that we changed the lighting and environment, and we were expecting to get this. It was a control. We weren't expecting anything to happen.
Yeah.
And we got this great result. And I'm sitting there with my graduate student, and I'm saying, "Hang on, you've got your groups mixed up. Something's wrong." It all got a little bit kind of subtly accusative. And then we found out that I think he gave them 5 lights that were supposed to be standard LED lights. He got one mixed up, and he had an LED light in there in which we put a big infrared LED.
Right.
Now, the point was everyone improved in the room. So the question then is, how much light do you need to put into an environment to improve it? And I think that's far less than we think.
Right.
I think if we get a small amount of light back in the room, we can have a big effect. So then I don't think we're talking about changing all the LEDs for incandescent or halogen. Remember, you can still get halogen bulbs because you can't put an LED in your oven, it will melt.
Right.
So halogen lights are still there, and they're just a type of incandescent. I don't think you've got to put very much in there to get an improvement. So that changes the story a bit.
Yeah. So if I look above me, I've got 2, 4, 6, 12 fluorescent, strip lights.
Strips.
Replace one with an incandescent or a halogen. You reckon we're good?
I reckon you're good. So, or just have a little angle poise. All of these experiments we described, perhaps to members of the public seem very high technology. We go to IKEA, we buy little cheap, nasty little angle poise lamps, and we stick a 40-watt light bulb in them, and then we put them in offices with 5 or 6 people. We get an effect.
Right.
So,
how are you measuring that effect?
So what we measure as a standard metric is your ability to perceive colors.
Okay.
So I'm a vision scientist. I'm a vision person. It's a bit of a statement to say I'm a scientist. I'm a vision person. So I have some toys that other people don't have that can measure improvements in things. So, okay, we can measure improvements in blood sugars. That's pretty easy, but you've got to prick people's fingers. I can actually put you in front of an extremely kind of upmarket monitor and ask you if you can see things.
Right.
Now, and this is color, working in color. And there's only one person in the world so far I've not had an improvement from, and she remains an unbelievable enigma. And I've run out of questions to ask her about her lifestyle and her genetics. But everyone else, sometimes the improvements are big, sometimes the improvements are very small. I don't know why. So we use vision and we use color because that's just my toolbox.
Right.
But putting a long wavelength light in a room, we've done this time after time, in spite of the horrible lights you've got above you, has an effect.
So that means that after that exposure to that light, after a day, how long?
Well, sorry to say this, but actually, it's only we published 3 hours, we get an improvement.
Right,
In actual fact, we can measure an improvement in about 30 minutes.
Sure. And then what's happening? They're seeing color better? Is that what?
Well, when you ask them, very few people report a change. But when you test the color, when you test their color perception, it is clearly better, and it is obvious. And it's obvious in domains like blue and red and yellow.
Right.
In all these color domains, there's improvements.
So, I don't know if I'm pushing the science too far by asking what's the mechanism behind that? Why does that incandescent do that?
Okay, because it's got a load of infrared in it, right?
Okay.
That's the first. Secondly, your retina and your photoreceptors, the things that mediate color, have got more mitochondria in them than anything else.
Okay.
And from a point of view of you and me, they age very rapidly. So we've got loads of room for improvement. Other bits of tissue don't have much in the way of mitochondria, like your bone. So I'm not expecting massive things there, but I'm lucky. I happen to be someone who's got toys to measure visual function, and vision suffers most of all.
Okay, so the eyes are sort of a view into our, pun intended, into our aging, basically. I mean, we can kind of see.
Oh, yeah. You've got to remember that, you're not really, in evolutionary terms, you're not supposed to live more than about 35 to 40 years.
Okay.
The guys who who were evolving in the African Rift Valley, they never really went beyond 30 maximum. So we've done something really weird. We've pushed lifespan, so we've got all these problems occurring. It's very unlikely that early man suffered from a lot of Parkinson's disease, from dementia, because they never lived that long. By pushing lifespan, the mitochondria will run down, and we start to get problems which are resting now on a critical edge of not having enough infrared to keep the mitochondria going.
Right, yeah. Okay. On a note, next to me, you can see this light. This is a clever little thing. I don't know if you've heard of the Australian company Bond Charge, and they do full spectrum lights. So it's got 3 settings where it's sort of midday, and then a kind of, that's the midday one. It's got the yellow. Is that helpful, this full spectrum lights? It doesn't have infrared.
No. You see, when people say full spectrum, that's very different. That's very different sales language from the language of the scientist. So the scientist is going to start saying full spectrum means sunlight, right? So it means you've got to generate light that goes out to 3,500 nanometers. You see from 400 to 700. That's where our LEDs are. What that device does is it moderates the spectrum of the light to fit certain times of day. So I've given up testing devices, but we've bought a number of full spectrum devices, and they change the color of the light. Maybe they push the edges a little bit, but no one I know of is producing a device that does proper full spectrum other than an incandescent light bulb or a fire. And what I tried doing, I tried it to resolve this by taking loads of different LEDs and sticking them all together. So I made the spectrum wider and wider. And the first thing is it drew more power than an incandescent light bulb. The second thing is it was big and it was expensive, and mitochondria didn't like it.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
get an improvement. They need that smooth function of sunlight,
Right.
and somehow they know
Mm.
when you're playing around at the edges. That was an expensive waste of time.
I've seen the spectrum sort of graphs of the light from an LED, from fluorescent, from incandescent, and the incandescent is a very smooth kind of
Smooth, yeah,
sunlight-ish.
yeah,
Fluorescent LEDs are very spiked.
yeah.
So obviously that's no good. That's just not powering your
No,
mitochondria.
no. I think a key image here is an image of sunlight and an image of an LED. The trouble is, if you put the graphs on the same page, the sunlight one is like this,
Mm.
and the LED one is about 3 millimeters stuck in the middle. So it's a
Yeah,
bit difficult to grasp.
yeah,
But it's absolutely clear. You need the full spectrum.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you about. Okay, so we've spoken about how we can set up our classrooms. Um, just on a humorous note, I actually had this same lamp, but I put an incandescent light in it, and took the shade off, and I had it on my desk for a couple of months, and my kids didn't know what it was. I mean, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
they've never seen it. So incandescent lights are not new, but having that, I mean, as you said, just having one light in your classroom. Surely, if you can't, if you're in a school that has no windows or very few windows, or you can't open them, or you're in England and it's too cold or whatever, an incandescent lamp on a desk, would that
Yeah.
be of
Yeah.
assistance?
There is something else about infrared. Infrared bounces around and scatters a lot. The
Okay.
light scatters.
Mm.
And I'm trying to find out how much it scatters in the built environment. It's one of the graduate students' projects at the moment.
Mm.
So I don't know the full limit of its scattering, but I
Mm.
know it's a lot. And when we did one experiment where I wanted to make sure that no red light reach the eye, the only way I could do it was wrap someone's head in aluminium foil. That's the only way I could stop light actually reaching their eye, because
Yeah.
we were in a room and it was all painted black, and you think, oh, this is, nothing's going to bounce around here. Bounce around like crazy.
Right.
Absolutely
Yeah.
like crazy. So we had to change the experiment and then tell people I had to wrap their heads in aluminium foil. Fortunately, they were
Yeah.
up for it.
Yeah. I did see. Is it Fosbury usually works with Zimmerman? Scott, is it Scott
Yes,
Zimmerman?
Scott Zimmerman.
Yeah, and I see he does a lot of that with the infrared and how deep it goes into the skin versus blue
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a bit of a tour de force, those two. I'm talking to them later today. Scott Zimmerman is a lighting engineer and
Right.
a
Yeah.
hardcore physicist.
Yeah.
Bob Fosbury is an astronomer by
Right.
background, and he controlled for the Hubble telescope for European use.
Mm.
He built the spectrometers on the James Webb telescope.
Oh wow.
I mean, serious guy.
Yeah.
When the two get together, I kind of understand about 4% of what's said, but there is a spin-off, so I'm paying attention to what I should do and what I shouldn't do.
Mm.
But we talked about silos, which I think is very important for understanding science. I think that the three of us, when we get together, I'm learning a lot, and I'm learning on a vertical curve. I would
Right.
never have learned this if I'd stayed in my own environment.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't know what it's like in South Africa. In the UK, kids specialize from about 16 years onwards in either science or arts, and it gets worse at universities, and the walls get built up between subjects.
Yeah.
And in the end, you find it very, very difficult to find a common language. This is a great example of breaking down the barriers. Yeah.
I have a few past students who are well, one is nearly 30 now, and I think she's finishing a PhD in studies of cancer. And she and one who left last year is now studying medicine down in the Cape. And I keep prodding them with the red light thing. I keep saying, don't get stuck in that sort of myopic zone, that silo. I don't know how seriously they take me. They're probably tired of it by now.
I know. I mean, thinking about South Africa in particular, I mean, a journalist asked me a whole load of questions for an article that was published in one of the papers in South Africa. there are a few ophthalmologists that have contacted me from South Africa.
Right.
So from a regional point of view, stuff is drifting in, and you have, I don't know of anyone specifically working in red light, but South African universities are extremely respectable universities. You just need someone who wants to pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to drift back to Dr. Ott's video. It just occurred to me, I had questions on that specific one of the kid you spoke about who's very hyperactive, and then they changed the lighting. That was still a fluorescent light, but a warmer glow. Does that actually have an effect if you have the warmer?
Warmer as opposed to cold white LEDs, there's no difference.
Yeah.
Okay. The trouble with the fluorescent strips is that they come in so many different forms, and they've each got loads and loads of spikes in them. So you're changing these spikes around relative to one another.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going on. Now, the thing about Ott, which it was, again, about his time, at no point did he actually measure the light with a spectrometer. He said, it now looks, which was good enough for his time.
Yeah,
it was good enough, But fluorescent tubes are very odd things. They're certainly not good things, but they come in more varied packages than an LED does.
Yeah.
Because it's got a whole series of spikes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how those spikes are interacting.
Right.
And I one thing that really annoyed me is that Ott is dead. And however, Scott Zimmerman did meet Ott apparently. But of course, without knowing, without knowing what this guy had really done.
Oh, wow.
But Ott had such a fluid mind. He didn't really pin it down to a load of hard experiments.
Yeah.
But you and I have watched it, and you and I pay attention to it.
Yeah. What I actually paid more attention to was aside from I think it was rats under different, fluorescent and then ultraviolet fluorescent, and then daylight, and obviously how the ultraviolet was much better than the normal fluorescent, and then obviously daylight was best. And then he referred very anecdotally, I suppose, to a school where that school particularly produced a lot of leukemia in children.
Yeah.
And then two teachers, apparently, it sounds very anecdotal, but two teachers, used to sit with everything closed up with the fluorescent lights. And when they left and that scenario changed, the incidence of leukemia disappeared. I don't know how much science there is behind that, but
I'd listen.
Yeah, exactly.
So my first reaction to light and cancer was we didn't do any red light on anybody that had a proliferative disease like cancer. It was a complete, we're out there. I examined a PhD at Westminster University earlier this year from a really outstanding young scientist, Ife. I can't pronounce her second name. It's this Greek kind of. However, she did some brilliant stuff showing actually long wavelength light does not increase cancer. In fact, if anything, it reduces it.
Right.
But the proliferative cell, the cancer cell, is so different from a normal cell, particularly in how it uses energy and its relationship with its mitochondria. We can't take the stuff that we do on normal cells, on normal light, and then say, okay, we can translate this to cancer. It's more complicated. They don't rely on their mitochondria in the same way. So the mitochondria don't have the same influence.
Right.
But I really thought that was, in the end, you actually think sounds like Ott's overstating. But the trouble is there's too many cases where he brings in the issue of the prisoners. So get them out of the prison, get them into the garden, and their behavior changes. I think I believe that, because of course, I work with architects and lighting engineers, and I work next to, they tell me it's the world's biggest eye hospital, Moorfields Eye Hospital. And one of my architects walked in there. She was Danish, and she said, I couldn't put this lighting in a prison back home. So no windows, horrible strip lighting. I've just got ethical permission to test those people. The worst thing is we're building a brand new Moorfields Eye Hospital, and it's all got crap LED
LEDs,
lighting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me think of, I mean, we've in the last 5 years, I think, invested as a school a lot in a magnificent academic support unit. I mean, it's wonderful. It's providing, proper support for kids with autism, various levels of autism, and the usual ADHD and that sort of thing, learning disabilities and such. But it is the most brightly lit part of the school with LEDs. I'm constantly walking in there and saying, guys, please turn the lights off and open the windows. Yeah.
We operate generally in learning environments, and I include that universities, in environments which are too bright. Now, we are turning the lights up more than is necessary for the learning process. You can still see the board, you can still interact with them, but there does be this thing about pushing as much energy out as you possibly can. I've changed the lighting in this office and my outer office area quite a bit, but it's quite interesting. Even then, my staff come in, and or people that work in the lab, they don't turn all the lights on.
Yeah,
it's unnecessarily bright.
Yeah. I was just thinking maybe we just for that particular unit, at least, like you said, just grab some industrial halogens or something, just put one in each ceiling. Maybe that would help.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't it be great? Okay, what's that gonna cost you?
Yeah,
practically nothing, right? So what about getting the relevant teaching staff on board and say, why don't we do this? And you can tell me at the end of the year if you thought it was any better.
Yeah,
right? Just tell me. So simple to do. Yeah.
Another question. Sorry, I'm not taking up too much of your time.
No. I'm here for you today. Okay.
Great, thanks. Just in terms of, because a lot of kids. I'm a bit of a dual nerdy jockey kind of character. I love my sports, but I'm also very nerdy. A lot of our kids, my colleagues are looking at me strangely. A lot of these kids like to sit and, bless them, study, read, whatever, stay out of the way, inside the classroom at break. If you're eating your lunch, now this goes back to your original research that we referred to in terms of glucose. Surely sitting outside on the field at break is a far healthier situation. I mean, these kids should be discouraged from sitting inside a classroom at the break time.
Definitely. Just definitely. I mean, that's not, I think, given the data, not only our data, but other people's data, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
That really is a no-brainer. You should not, but there again, kids might want to see inside.
No, exactly. I'm going to start chasing them.
Yeah, or just making sure that environment has got an incandescent light bulb somewhere in it. If they don't want to go. I mean, I find the idea living in Northern Europe of not wanting to go outside in South Africa quite bizarre, but grew up in South Africa.
Yeah. You said you had some slides. I don't know if you want to share them.
No, I haven't prepared any
Okay,
slides.
no, that's fine. Yeah.
But what I would, perhaps, my slides, some of my slides are very self-evident. Maybe I can send you a couple of slides, and you can tag them on the end to this.
Yeah.
And I think because normally my talks tend to be a little bit on the technical side. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to send you a couple of slides, and when you put this on, and the slides will be self-evident.
Yeah.
Why don't you click that? And because I would like people who watch your presentation to be able to see what sunlight looks like.
Yeah.
Because you don't get all the stuff you can't see.
Well, we've got a very clever young production manager. He'll do it, young Chris.
Right. Okay. Well, I will tag those on later today, and I'll send you those slides with a little bit of verbal.
Fantastic.
And what I think would be important, I mean, I've begun to learn that what I should be doing is grabbing influencers. Who influences things?
Yeah.
So that was my transition from doctors to architects.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
They can influence, but also at the same time, every teacher you've got in your school is a potential influencer over a group of 30 people.
Exactly.
Right? They influence not only their education, but they can influence their health.
Yeah, I've got this. I don't know if it's a saying now, but I get a lot of teachers will say, "Oh, but the kids said it's cold; they must close the windows." If the kids say they want to eat sweets all day and drink Coca-Cola all day, I'm not going to say yes. So why would I say yes for your light environment? It's the same thing. It's ultimately doing the same harm.
Yeah. It definitely is. But there again, the kids don't regulate their light environment. You do.
Exactly.
You do. So I believe that we, as those that are in the know, have a responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, someone doesn't take it up. I walk around saying to the people that are building the new Moorfields Eye Hospital, I keep saying, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be an issue. You have a responsibility to say it. It's pot luck whether anyone listens.
Yeah, I'm finding that a lot too.
yeah, it's pot luck.
Yeah. Dr. Jeffery, I'm going to let you go. Do you have any last words to teachers and students and parents alike?
I think the issue of empowerment, the issue of mums and dads having. Okay, so what we do is have a halogen lamp in the kitchen, right? In the mornings, give yourself a burst. That's what most of us do. I come in here, I cycle to work, generally a bit wet and a bit cold, and I'm changing all my gear under a halogen lamp. It's enough. All right. So it's enough. And I would really like you to come back to me. I'd
love to.
Come back to me and say, Glenn, that was all a load of rubbish and it didn't work, because I need to be corrected in the way in which we do things. Or how many halogens do I need in a corridor? I'll tell you how many, or if you can't get them, we'll even send you the halogen bulbs free of charge.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no excuses for any of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'd love to have you back if you're willing.
I'm certainly willing. Yeah. And you've seen me say this before, or I'm not sure. I'll answer people's emails. Okay.
Yeah.
I will. You can find me, Glen Jeffery at UCL.
We'll put a link. We'll put a little link in the YouTube thing there.
And we have a responsibility to talk to people.
Yeah.
We have a response. And if you have, for instance, an elderly person stuck miles away from somewhere who gets very confused and very distressed, you have a responsibility for dealing with that. And likewise with your, I think probably more particularly your parents and perhaps some of your sixth formers, we have a responsibility to answer that. So please do put my email address on the link.
Will do.
Sometimes it takes me a while to get through them, but I kind of promise myself by late on Sunday evening I've done it.
Yeah. Well, you responded to me very rapidly. I was very pleased, very chuffed.
We need to talk. So I have reduced some of our lab work. I've said we've now got to spend 10 to 20% of our time talking. Otherwise, we're not going to dent anything. Because we now know where we are. We know 99% we know the answer. So now we've got to talk. So I will happily chat to you anytime you like. And I mean, for instance, if you've got a group of parents together to sit there and say, Glenn, what was all that about? Then get them in and squeeze the sixth formers in as well.
No, 100%. We were actually thinking of doing you actually mentioned in the email, let's do a live.
Let's do a live.
Yeah, do some Q&A. Maybe in our hall we can bring in some advertisers, bring in some parents and children.
Yeah, do it. Do it. I would love to take part in that. Yeah.
We'll definitely arrange it.
I'll leave that with you. I'll send you a couple of images.
Fantastic.
And I'm here if you need me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeffery.